I think perhaps unlike any other pop artist, David Bowie has the power to change lives. As an artist, he's inspired other artists more powerfully than anyone else I can think of. He has to be the most influential artist of all time, without any doubt.
And I see it, I mean, the way I saw Bowie in the 70s was the equivalent of Warhol in the 60s, in that they both ruled the decade. They defined it and they changed it.
I remember seeing that Ziggy Stardust cover and looking at that sort of misty, rain-drenched street, and that photograph is just like, was like, that's the city. And that was like, in a way, a new frontier. It was like to actually sort of go to the city as opposed to go to the country, which is like what you're supposed to do in rock and roll.
Britain's power and influence has declined since the beginning of the century. And the question is this a trend we can reverse?
He was coming out of the 60s at a time when all of the idealism of the 60s had soured and died. And a lot of people felt that these were end times, that we were looking at the end of the world. There was the first stirrings of environmental disaster, and there were all kinds of wars going on. And he was reacting to that in a way of, first of all, setting the scene with songs like 5 years, literally saying we've got 5 years left to live, but also saying it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's celebrate the end of the world. Let's party in the ruins. And I think that's what Ziggy Stardust, the album, is all about.
And I would have seen him obviously on Top of the Pops. I mean, this is an era when Top of the Pops was basically all the information you got as a child about popular culture or the outside world. And it gave you an idea of how music could look like. That's what music looked like, but also what it sounded like.
If you remember that at the time that he became famous, homosexuality in Britain hadn't long been legalised. He was portraying what you might call the life of Bi in a way that did make it seem tragic or some kind of hidden underground secret, but made it seem like incredible fun. And when you think of things like that, you can see how he must have blown people's minds at the time.
When I did see an image of David Bowie the first time, I was just astonished to see as a sort of otherworldly person. And he's got such an interesting face. I mean, the cheekbones, the teeth, sort of like the very androgynous style that he had. He wears clothes that's elegant. He knows what suits him. He's incredibly good looking. His eyes are very, very, very extraordinary. It was an enormous influence. I just wanted to be David Bowie from the age of 4.
When I was a teenager, getting Low on tape and playing that a lot as an album, it's almost a perfect album. And thinking that was done in '77, and it still sounds like it was made tomorrow almost. There's still a futurism about it, which is very unusual. It basically informed everything in that record, informed everything that was going to happen in the 80s, in terms of music production, sound of music, and use of synthesizers and other instruments, more traditional instruments.
Around 1980, around the time of Ashes to Ashes and the Scary Monsters album, the artists who were big at the time were always name-checking David Bowie and saying what a formative influence he was. And finally, David Bowie turns up himself, making this record right in the middle of the New Romantic movement, which pretty much says, I was here first, you're on my territory, I'm not on yours. And I think that was a really fascinating moment in pop.
Ashes to Ashes in particular started an entire trend of putting film quality production material into music videos. Things that were tossed aside as not necessary for music videos.
I'm stuck with a valuable friend. Hope you're happy too. One flash of light, but no smoking pistol.
It's not completely autonomous. His genius is actually collaborative, and he's always achieved his effects by working with the best people he can find, whether it's choreographers like Lindsay Kemp, photographers like Mick Rock, and producers Brian Eno, Tony Visconti. They're all part of the Bowie story, and he wouldn't be what he is without them.
his attention to detail is probably what is constant, and his sort of attempts to be a bit ahead or to do something that's different.
I think the thing that's remained a constant throughout all of the personas and all of the work is the flux. It's a beautiful thing that the changeability is a constant.
He became that person. I think that's consistent, that the level of intention remained the same. He's a purist. He's an artist.
His writing's actually quite pared down and quite minimal in a lot of ways, and lyrical in the literal sense of being very poetic, the way that he puts words together for the way they feel together aesthetically as much for the meaning, just the beauty of words jammed together, things like referring to a slinky vagabond or talking about Munro and walking on Snow White. I mean, who knows what it means, but it just sounds absolutely fantastic. It kind of fizzes and crackles out of the speakers.
The thing that makes David Bowie unique as a performer and a musician is that he is a performer first, and it's as much about the dramaturgy of his personae, it's as much about a full-scale performance as it is just about an album or just about a song.
There's no disconnect that you find with some people these days who dress up as so-and-so, and because it was so much part of the freedom to do it, because now it's much more difficult, it's sort of much more thought out, that sort of reinvention process, but it came from him. He did it with an ease which is uncanny. I mean, that's what makes him different. He is uncanny.
It's just everywhere. It's so big that you can't see it, the scale of influence of someone like that. It's just throughout. Because so it left rock culture and became part of popular culture and then mass culture. So it's like the air you breathe almost in terms of popular culture.
I think the title David Bowie is it's pretty honorable to David Bowie, because he is. I mean, everything we see in our culture of art and music and fashion, etc. A lot of that information is really tantamount to Bowie.
It is important that the title is in the present tense, and it's not just that the V&A thought it would be interesting or provocative, is that it has to be, because he's present, because he's always making work.
He genuinely is still an active artist, and he's nobody's museum piece or zoo animal or frozen exhibit.
So I think David Bowie is. He always will be.